Montgomery County 911. What is the emergency?
Hi, yes, I just called 911 to come, and there's 2 dead people in the back of my store. There's a woman that's alive, and she's breathing.
Tied up?
She's tied up.
Okay, and you're saying that there's one person is dead?
One person seems dead, and the other person is breathing. I need an ambulance right away.
Did you see anything, or this is all?
No, I didn't. I was too scared to walk back because it looked like there was a struggle. I knew something was wrong. Hold on, the police are here now. Oh my God, I'm so scared that one of my girls is hurt.
I will.
March 12, 2011, 8 a.m. Rachel Ordley, the manager of Lululemon, arrived at work as she did every day to open the store. Noticing that the door was already open, she assumed it was carelessness on the part of whoever closed up the night before. As Rachel stepped inside, the lights were on and clothes and accessories were scattered everywhere. She immediately realized the store had been robbed. In a panic, she shouted, asking if anyone was there, and in response, she heard a moan, a sound that terrified her. She ran out of the store to call the police. Next door to Lululemon was an Apple store, which wasn't set to open until 10 a.m., but a man named Ryan Hogg was standing outside, waiting. Rachel approached him and asked if he could accompany her back into the Lululemon store. Ryan, unaware of the full situation, agreed to help. The day before, the new iPad 2 had been released, and Ryan explained that he was simply waiting for the Apple Store to open so he could buy one. When they entered Lululemon, Rachel asked Ryan to go to the back of the store to check where the moan had come from. As Ryan entered the stockroom, he saw a body lying face down in a pool of blood. He immediately called out to Rachel, telling her to contact the police because, from what he could tell, there was a dead body. As Ryan turned to leave the stockroom, he noticed another woman, her hands tied. She appeared to be unconscious, but it was clear that she was still breathing. Ryan told Rachel what he had seen, a lifeless body and a woman who was still alive, and that it looked like both had been attacked. At that moment, Rachel made her second call to the police. The officers quickly arrived at the scene. It was around 8:20 a.m. when they were met with a horrifying sight. The store, it had clearly been robbed. One of the women lay dead in a pool of blood, brutally wounded, while the other was alive but unresponsive. She was bound with tape and injured. These were Lululemon employees, Jayna Murray, the woman who had died, and Brittany Norwood, the survivor of the attack. Both had worked the closing shift the night before, around 10 p.m. So, someone must have come in just before closing and attacked them. It was still unclear, was this a robbery, revenge, or had Jayna been trying to protect the store and was killed in the process? Perhaps Brittany had complied with the attacker's demands, and that's why she survived. Brittany Norwood was placed on a stretcher and taken to a nearby hospital, where her wounds were treated, and the doctors determined whether she needed to be admitted. At that point, they didn't yet know how serious her injuries were. Visible cuts covered her chest, legs, arms, and forehead, but what stood out the most was a deep 2-inch gash on her right thumb, likely from trying to defend herself during the knife attack. Jayna Murray's lifeless body was transported to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy. The results were shocking. The attack had been brutal, and Jayna's injuries were far more severe than those of her co-worker. This led investigators to believe that Jayna might have indeed tried to fight off the attacker, or that she was the target all along, and someone had come there with the sole intention of killing her. The autopsy revealed that Jayna Murray's body had 330 wounds. This means the attack was extremely brutal, usually indicating that it was driven by rage. The question is, who could have been so angry, filled with such hatred, to inflict that many wounds? This wasn't just murder. It was torture. Most of the injuries were stab and slash wounds spread across her entire body. Jayna remained alive during most of the attack, meaning she was conscious for the majority of her suffering. The sheer number of wounds suggests that this could have been a deeply personal attack by someone who hated her. At the crime scene, forensic experts discovered one of the most crucial pieces of evidence in the case, a bloody footprint from a size 46 Reebok sneaker. They concluded that this print likely belonged to the attacker. Both women involved in the incident had athletic backgrounds. Jayna Murray was born in Houston, Texas, on November 22, 1980. She was 30 years old at the time of her murder. Her family consisted of her parents, David and Phyllis, herself, and 2 siblings. Everyone described her as a very positive woman. Jayna also traveled the world. She even studied in China, taking the opportunity to explore Asia and even visiting Japan. One of her passions was staying healthy and being active, especially through yoga. On her last birthday, when she turned 30, Jayna recorded herself bungee jumping. This shows she was adventurous and full of life. Her love for sports started at a young age. Jayna was involved in many activities: ballet, jazz, tap dancing, volleyball, and much more. Some details of her life also include her love for Mexican food. In fact, every year on Jayna's birthday, her family goes to her favorite Mexican restaurant to remember her. The truth is, everyone in her life only had good things to say about her. No one understood why Jayna had to suffer, why she was killed. Investigators questioned everyone, even her boyfriend, the one she was planning to marry, but no one had a motive. It seemed like Jayna had no enemies, yet someone secretly hated her. After graduating from college, Jayna moved to Arlington, Virginia, to pursue a higher degree at Johns Hopkins University. During that time, she visited a Lululemon store in the area looking for a job, but they told her they weren't hiring and that the Montgomery County store in Bethesda, Maryland, was the one hiring. Although the store in Maryland was a 30-minute drive away, she didn't want to miss the opportunity because she loved the brand. Jayna sent in her resume, and just a few days later, she was hired. She got the position not only because of her knowledge of yoga, but because of her charisma. Jayna quickly became one of Lululemon's top salespeople. Unlike Jayna, Brittany, the second victim of the attack, had a more difficult life. Brittany Norwood was born into a poor family with 8 siblings, and there weren't many reasons for her to smile. According to her own words, she and her family constantly suffered from racism. Despite this, her classmates noted that she never lost her composure and was often cheerful. Sports played a big role in helping her stay positive, in particular, soccer. Brittany played soccer in school and became one of the star players in her district. Thanks to her skills, she earned a scholarship to study at New York University. Her dream was to play for the official U.S. women's soccer team and participate in a World Cup someday. But unfortunately, a lack of money and opportunities cut that dream short. Brittany studied sociology at New York University on her scholarship, but later moved to Arlington, Virginia. There, she worked 2 jobs, one at the Willard Intercontinental Hotel and the other at Lululemon. However, according to some reports, she had recently been transferred to the Montgomery County store shortly before the attack. Both women, at the time of the incident, lived in Arlington. They led different lives, but they shared a love for sports. It's possible that they became targets of a criminal who intended to harm them. Tragically, one of them didn't survive, but at least one woman lived, perhaps to bring justice for her fallen co-worker. At the crime scene, the first clues were uncovered: a man's bloody footprint, a knife, which was the main weapon used in the attack, though investigators noted that several items from the store were used to inflict all the wounds on Jayna's body. In addition, 3 bundles of cash were missing from the safe. And let's not forget, one woman survived the attack. Brittany Norwood's story might help explain what happened and who was responsible, At the very least, her account could lead the police to the truth. The robbery pointed to a possible motive, but the number of wounds didn't match the pattern of a typical robbery. In most cases, robbers don't intend to kill unless forced to, either because they're caught or someone refuses to comply. Also, these killings are usually quick, often involving a firearm. However, the attack on Jayna was carried out with a knife, and the perpetrator took time to torture her. On March 12th, at 2:35 p.m., the first interrogation of Brittany Norwood took place at a suburban hospital. She stated that the attack wasn't carried out by one person, but rather two masked men had entered the store. One of them dealt with Jayna, while the other attacked her. According to her account, she was assaulted with a clothes hanger. Brittany couldn't give further details, as she was under the influence of sedatives. Officers agreed to interview her again in the coming days, in case she remembered anything else. That same day, investigators interviewed employees from the neighboring Apple store, which was open until 11 p.m. Knowing that the attack must have happened around that time, they asked if anyone had seen or heard anything. That's when the first witness came forward, but all they heard were voices. This person said they heard two women's voices. One of them was shouting, "Talk to me, don't do this, tell me what's happening," while the other woman's voice cried out, "Oh my God, help me, please help me." After that, they only heard screams and moans, and then silence. The witness also noted hearing a sound as if something was being dragged. Surprisingly, the witness, who worked at Apple, didn't call the police. Instead, he informed the security guard who went to check Lululemon. The guard looked through the window, saw nothing unusual, and returned to the Apple store. The witness also mentioned that, later, he informed the Apple store manager about what he'd heard, and that by 11 p.m., when he left work, there was no more noise. Detectives working on the case went to Brittany Norwood's home to see if she remembered anything new about the attack. When they arrived, Brittany, still in some pain, invited them into the living room to talk. They asked if she had recalled any additional details over the past 2 days, hoping to identify the two men she had mentioned. Brittany then tried to explain how the events unfolded. She recounted that when the two men entered the store, one of them immediately came toward her, while the other grabbed Jayna. Brittany described the attackers as white men wearing ski masks, and from their voices, she estimated their ages to be between 25 and 27. She mentioned that the man who attacked her was about 165 centimeters tall, while the one attacking Jayna was slightly taller, around 180 centimeters. Both men were dressed in black and wore gloves. Brittany also explained that after Jayna was killed, the man who had assaulted her began looting the store, while the other one started tormenting her. When Brittany began to talk about Jayna's murder and the torment she endured, she started to cry. It was clear she had been through something deeply traumatic, but the detectives needed as much information as possible, as she was the only survivor and the only witness at the scene. Brittany also noted that one of the men said to her, "Your name is Brittany, and you live on such and such street," which terrified her even more. However, she told investigators that she believed the attackers had seen two bills, one for the internet and another for gas, inside her wallet, which had her name and address on them and had been stolen during the robbery. Another detail Brittany mentioned was that the man tormenting her began insulting her and even made racist remarks. After the abuse, he pushed her onto Jayna's body, which by then was lifeless. The detectives asked Brittany if her family was supporting her, and she said yes. She mentioned having conversations with them about returning to Seattle to stay safe, but also expressed excitement about starting her new job in Bethesda once she recovered from her injuries. Since the attackers knew Brittany's address, the detectives gave her direct contact information in case any of them showed up at her house. After this, the investigators found their first suspect in the case. It was a man with a prior conviction for violence who had been living in Bethesda at the time of the attacks. The bloody footprint matched the size of his shoes, but at that point, this was the only thing connecting him to the crime. They needed to find more evidence that would point to him as a suspect. As more clues emerged, the authorities concluded that this man couldn't have been the perpetrator. The only link between him and the crime scene was the matching shoe size, but it turned out he had an alibi for the night of the robbery. No DNA or fingerprints were found to identify him at the scene, so he was officially ruled out. His name was never made public, and all we know is that for a time he was considered a suspect, but during the analysis of the collected evidence, the detectives uncovered something new, something that didn't quite make sense. Among the evidence was a medical report that caught their attention. It stated that Brittany Norwood had not been sexually assaulted. Moreover, it detailed the injuries found on her body, a few on her arms and a few on her legs, but the most noticeable were a cut on her forehead, a scratch on her back, and a 5-centimeter cut on her right thumb. Compared to the injuries inflicted on Jayna, what had been done to Brittany was almost nothing. But why would she lie about the assault? On the other hand, another witness came forward. The manager of Brittany and Jayna recalled an incident from the night of the attack. She said that around 10 p.m., Brittany called her, saying she had forgotten her wallet at the store and asked if she could contact Jayna to come back and unlock the door. Jayna was the one who locked up the store every night, and she was the only one with the key. 4 days after the attack, investigators began to suspect that Brittany might be hiding something. She became a person of interest in the case. Since Brittany was needed to provide hair samples and fingerprints, the detectives informed her that they needed to meet with her that day to continue the questioning. They never told her she was a person of interest. They only said that the samples were necessary to exclude her presence at the crime scene, which is a standard procedure when someone who isn't a suspect was present. But clearly their goal was to see if they could prove that Brittany had indeed committed the attack. The investigators also asked her to stay because they wanted to question her. It was incredibly important, as this was the moment they could catch inconsistencies in her story, already knowing she might be a suspect. The interrogation lasted 2 hours and 55 minutes. The first hour was spent collecting samples, while the rest was used for questioning Brittany about her testimony. She kept insisting that the attackers were 2 white men. They asked if she knew what car Jayna drove, but she said she didn't know. Brittany shared more details, talked about how terrified she was to face one of the attackers, and broke down in tears when she mentioned Jayna. The investigators let her go, but asked her to return on March 18th at 10 a.m. The officers were waiting for crucial evidence to make an arrest, and that evidence came: a surveillance video from the parking lot near Lululemon, where Brittany was seen, driving the victim's car, alone. The interrogation on March 18th, Brittany's 4th, started off normally. She said she was excited about moving to Seattle, where she would live with her brother, Chris, but the only thing bothering her about the move was that she still wanted to help with the investigation. Then, the lead detective asked her again about Jayna's car, and once again, Brittany said she didn't know what kind of car her co-worker drove. That's when the detective showed her a picture, taken on the night of the attack, showing Brittany parking Jayna's car in a lot just a few blocks away from the crime scene. Brittany then claimed that the attackers made her move the car there, and that they had been watching her the entire time. She went on to say that when she got to the lot, she saw a police car, but didn't call for help because she was afraid for her life. But the detectives knew that wasn't possible. She wasn't visible from Lululemon, as she had turned right 2 blocks away, making it impossible for anyone to see her, much less follow her. That's when the detective told Brittany he didn't believe her story, that there were too many inconsistencies, that it was all a lie. Then, they read her rights and arrested her on suspicion of murdering Jayna Murray. By this time, several pieces of evidence had been processed. DNA from under Jayna's nails confirmed that the scratch on Brittany's back was made by Jayna during the attack, likely in self-defense. Although there weren't many surveillance camera recordings, the ones that did exist only showed Brittany. There were no masked white men. Furthermore, the woman had never been assaulted. She hid details in her testimony and changed many others to make it seem like the attack was carried out by two people. The prosecution also had witnesses against Brittany, her college soccer teammates from New York University, who said that while Brittany was nice, she had a small problem. She was a kleptomaniac. She constantly stole, which led to her being expelled from university and losing her scholarship. It was also proven that the cut on her right thumb was inflicted when she attacked Jayna. Additionally, it was established that she had tied her own hands to fake an assault. Several of the wounds on her body were self-inflicted, and she had lied for days to the authorities and her family, who believed for months that Brittany was innocent. On top of all this, it was proven that the bloody male footprint found in the store had been made by Brittany herself, using a sneaker that was later found in the store. The most challenging part of the trial was proving why Brittany had brutally killed Jayna, what her motive was. As evidence, 5 objects that Brittany had allegedly used to inflict injuries on Jayna's body were presented: a hammer, a dagger, a clothing hanger, a stick taken from one of the hangers, and a Swiss Army knife. It was also proven that the motive wasn't theft, as the money missing from the safe was found hidden in the same room. In October, the trial began. The amount of evidence was so overwhelming that Brittany Norwood pleaded guilty, claiming she acted in self-defense. She said the attack happened after Jayna insulted her and was the first to strike. The trial lasted 6 days, and the jury found her guilty of first-degree murder. On January 27, 2012, the judge delivered the verdict, sentencing her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. It's clear that she killed Jayna. The evidence proves it. And Brittany partially admitted to it, although she insisted it was in self-defense. But the question remains, why? The prosecution described the attack as revenge for being caught stealing a pair of yoga pants, but Brittany never explained the true reason. What happened between them that made the attack so violent? Many believe the true motive was jealousy. Brittany envied Jayna's life. And perhaps the murder wasn't about a petty theft, but because Brittany wanted Jayna's life, something she could never have because of her own poverty.
Thanks for watching, friends. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm always interested in your opinions. Subscribe to my channel. There's much more to come. See you next time.